Hello and hi, welcome to Yedidia Shofet, and welcome to part one of 3 parts in regards to halachot or laws of Pesach. We'll begin with the laws concerning CHAMETZ on Pesach. What is CHAMETZ and different ideas about it. Halacha number 1. The prohibition of eating CHAMETZ, which is leaven, applies to 5 types of grains. You have chita, seorah, shibolet shu'al, kusemet, and shifon, which is translated as wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. Halacha number 2. If any of these grains, they ferment after remaining in contact with water, then according to the Torah, they may not be eaten on Pesach, as they are considered as chametz. Halacha number 3. The flour of any of the above 5 types of grain, which comes into contact with water and remains in contact for 18 minutes without any touching or manipulation, is considered to have risen and thus designated as chametz. But if this dough is continuously kneaded and kneaded and kneaded for even an hour, the process of fermentation is impeded for the duration of the kneading. Meaning, if let's say you pour flour and water together, if you leave it for 18 minutes, then it's chametz. But if you poured the flour and water together and you were squishing and kneading it together for 18 minutes and then you let go, the clock starts from when you let go, when it sits there. That's when it begins to rise. Number 4. To eat chametz on Pesach is a very grievous sin. The penalty for which we say karet. Karet can mean cutting off, if you want to call it. Whether it's the soul, whether if it's for generations, there are many explanations as to what karet is. The minimal quantity which the law takes, or recognizes that a person, if he eats chametz, is an olive's bulk, which is about 29 grams. You take an olive, like the big olives, like the size of half the size of an egg. So that's that amount, that volume of chametz. If you eat that, that's when a person is liable for a karet, according to Halacha. It should be noted that the slightest amount is prohibited by the Torah, even though this particular punishment is not incurred for less than the quantity stated. And for those who are seriously ill, because sometimes people are sick and they need certain foods that are made from chametz, we will talk about that shortly. Number 5, chametz which is unfit to be eaten by a dog. For instance, cosmetic products made from chametz may be used during Pesach. So just as a disclaimer, you don't need to go through every single cosmetic product to see if your mascara is fine, if your deodorant is fine, if your shampoo is fine, from the guides. Anything which is unfit for a dog, not questionably unfit, but as a matter of fact, unfit for a dog to eat, then it may be used on Pesach without any problems. Now, halacha number 6. If chametz has become mixed with other foods before Pesach, the product may not be eaten on Pesach unless there is 60 times as much other matter in the mixture as there is of chametz. If, however, such a mixing occurs during Pesach, its consumption is forbidden, no matter how little the chametz is included. Consequently, in order to avoid all complications, it is customary to only purchase food that is kosher lePesach, or basically only for Pesach, which is prepared under rabbinic supervision, and or are listed by the rabbinate as being free from chametz. What this is telling us is something very, very important, and that is that before Pesach starts, if you have a drop of chametz which has fallen into any type of food, and it's 60 times that drop of chametz is in that food, then automatically that chametz is nullified, meaning it's as if it doesn't exist anymore. But if that happens on Pesach, and let's say a piece of food, chametz, falls into your pot or to whatever type of food you have, even if there's 1,000 times against that piece of chametz, it doesn't nullify the chametz, because chametz is something which is indefinitely asur, which is forbidden to have on Pesach, no matter how many times a person is basically trying to nullify it. That's the difference. So therefore, make sure that when you go and you buy foods, you find that OUP or that OKP or whatever it is kosher for Passover. And even if you suspect and think, it's no problem, it's all the same, don't be so quick to think so, because the same way if somebody has a peanut allergy, he can't eat certain foods because it may have come in contact with a conveyor belt line that had peanuts or soy or whatever it is the same way we have to look at something which is even more important, and that is on Pesach, if a person eats such foods, it's completely a stain on his soul. So Bezrat Hashem, we have to be a little careful, and it's not that hard to abstain, especially when nowadays you can find everything and anything your stomach and heart desires in all these kosher supermarkets. Number 7. So now, if a grain of wheat has been found in food, for instance, you cooked your food and now you found a grain of wheat, or you found it in a chicken. Now, it's been cooked on Pesach, and remember we just said that if you cook something on Pesach that even has a little bit of wheat, it's asur, it's forbidden to eat. As a general rule, consumption is forbidden if the grain is found to be split, meaning it's been opened up, it's been cooked, it's been it's an actual grain which is turned into CHAMETZ. However, if it's not, meaning it has its little wrapping over the grain, one should consult his Rav, he should consult his rabbi to see what he should do in such a situation. Number 8. Now, there's something called kitniot. Kitniot, legumes or legumes, whatever you want to call it. It's such as beans, peas, all lentils, rice, corn, all of these things. They can never be chametz. That's what it's a very big misconception. None of these things could ever be chametz. But since they can be ground into flour and then resemble the 5 species, or if you remember the 5 species were wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye, since it can actually resemble them, the Ashkenazim, they forbid the consumption of all of these on Pesach. But many Sephardi communities follow this custom that absolutely not. We do not at all think that this is considered as chametz. As long as our food is checked and we know that there's no wheat in it, we can have it, no problem. Number 9. People who do not eat pulse or rice on Pesach may nevertheless eat other food in the homes of those who do, even though utensils have been cooking rice or these type of kitniot, these type of legumes on Pesach. Now, what is this halacha telling us? It's telling us, you would think if someone doesn't keep a high standard of kosher, you can't eat at his house. But the truth of the matter is that this is not the same as a high standard of kosher. This is rather a tradition or a minhag, meaning that rice, technically, if you don't eat from the rice, you can still eat from everything else. And you don't have to worry about the kosher standards. That's the difference. Number 10. If an Ashkenazi woman marries a Sephardi, remember, the Ashkenazi doesn't eat kitniot, doesn't eat rice, doesn't eat any of these type of foods on Pesach. And the Sephardi, he does. Or vice versa. The wife should follow the custom of her husband, meaning if the husband eats rice, she may do so. And that ends off with the first chapter of this part of what is chametz. And it's very interesting. Chacham Ovadia Yosef says something very beautiful. He says that, let's say if the girl is Sephardi and she marries an Ashkenaz guy and they go over the house of the girl, she may in fact partake in the eating of rice. Okay? Now, let's go to the next chapter. This is the laws concerning the feeding of animals on Pesach. Many people have pets in their house and they want to know what do they do with their animals. So let's continue. Number 1. One may not feed on Pesach. You cannot feed chametz to their animals, their birds, their fish, regardless whether or not the chametz is owned by the Jew or owned by the Gentile. You can't tell Ricardo to come in order to feed your animal, because your animal also is not allowed to have chametz on Pesach. Furthermore, even if the animal is ownerless, it is forbidden to throw your bread or chametz for that animal to eat, since one derives satisfaction from giving it food. As you see people sitting by the pond and throwing breadcrumbs or whatever it is to all these ducks. Number 2. One may not give one's animals or birds to a Gentile for him to feed them with chametz, as this is considered deriving benefit from chametz on Pesach, because it just defeats the whole purpose. However, it is permissible to give the animal to a Gentile to feed without knowing whether or not he will feed it chametz. Meaning, if you know he's going to definitely feed it chametz, and he tells you he's going to feed it chametz, you have to interject and say, listen, we don't feed our animals chametz. But if you didn't say anything and you're just giving it to him like a dog walker, he has his own treats, he has his own whatever it is, you don't have to direct him as to what to do. Number 3. One may also sell birds or animals to a Gentile before Pesach and then repurchase them after Pesach, even though the animal will have eaten chametz. Basically, to go around this, what has happened? That a person has to be able to sell his animal in terms of trade, just like when he sells his chametz before Pesach. And when he sells his animal or his chametz, it's technically not his anymore, and anything can be done with it. And that's the end of the halachot. But remember, if the food, just let you know, before we go to the next chapter, if the food is once again not edible by dog standards, then, for instance, by certain fish foods, Chacham Ovadia Yosef says that even though that the fish food might have types of chametz in there, nevertheless, since that fish food is impossible to be eaten by a dog, and even have any taste, it's like poison almost, the taste of that food, one may feed his fish with it. Number 50, this is the next chapter, laws concerning the medicines on Pesach. A sick person who must take medication is permitted to take either tablets or liquid medicines containing chametz, as long as the taste is unpleasant. With regard to pleasantly flavored medication, a God-fearing doctor should be consulted and asked, if possible, to prescribe such that are chametz-free. Because nowadays, over the counter, we have odorless, we have tasteless, we have everything, and it's more preferable to actually choose the tablets or pills that even if they are coated with something, the fact that you just swallow it, it's not in the manner of eating, so you're not deriving any pleasure from that. Number 2, in regards to the laws of medicine, it should be noted that the above law applies if there is no danger to life. In the latter case, obviously, if there's a danger in life, you may eat chametz to save your life. Because remember, it says in the Torah, chayecha, it says v'chai bahem, and you have to live by them. So you have to live by the laws, not just kill yourself and not be able to practice anything. Okay, next one. We're going to the laws concerning chametz brought into a Jewish home on Pesach. Now, this would happen basically if you ask your cleaning lady to come for Pesach, and the cleaning lady by now probably knows all the laws of Pesach because she's been in a lot of Jewish homes. But if she is somewhat of an imbecile at this point, and what does she do? She brings in food into your house. What do you do with this food that's either left there or food that is brought into your home on Pesach? Number 1. As a general rule, if a non-Jew enters the house of a Jew carrying chametz, the Jew is not required to ask him to remove the chametz, because the Torah says, "Velo yira'eh lecha seor." Leaven, basically chametz, shall not be seen by you. The Talmud explains, your own leaven shall not be seen, but you can see all these chametz that is owned by all these non-Jews. For instance, when you go to Ralph's, Kroger's, Giant, or hundreds of other supermarkets, CVS, Walgreens, you go to any of these places, it's absolutely not a problem to look at all the chametz over there. Obviously, one should not really devote his mind on that, but it's not an isur because it's only referring to your own chametz. Consequently, if a Gentile is working during the intermediary days of Pesach in a factory belonging to a Jew, he may bring his own sandwich to eat. But most probably, the factories, when it comes to food, it's asur to bring because it can fall in. Nevertheless. Okay, next halacha. If on Pesach, including the 8th day, a Gentile delivers a present containing chametz to a Jew, he should not accept it. In the event that one does accept it, then the chametz is prohibited to him even after Pesach, as one is forbidden to benefit from one's own chametz that has not been disposed of before Pesach. This is very important. If, let's say, a co-worker gives you a bottle of a blue label whiskey, you cannot accept it on Pesach. You would have to say, listen, it's my holiday. We don't accept anything which is grain-like or gluten, as they like to say. Now, please, if I can come pick it up, it's yours until after Passover. I can come pick it up after that. More often than not, they will be obliging to your demand, but you shouldn't worry about that. However, if you do accept it, it's considered yours on Pesach, and anything that is considered yours on Pesach, there was a rabbinical ban where you can never enjoy anything that has been under your possession on Pesach, which is CHAMETZ, indefinitely. So now, next chapter, and that is chapter of HAGALAH. This is a very big chapter, so please bear with me. This is all about immersing your utensils. We know before Pesach there's a lot of utensils that you want to use for Pesach, that you use throughout the year, but we can't always use all those utensils because they absorb foods, they absorb chametz. So you want to clean it out so you can use it for Pesach. So this is the entire chapter about your vessels, your kitchenware, your countertops, your pots, your pans, your spoons, your forks, all this stuff. We're going to go through it right now. It'll take hopefully about 10 minutes to go through this, and hopefully you'll be able to help anyone else, because this is the most common questions that we go through during the preparations of Pesach. So let's begin. Number 1, vessels absorb the taste of the food that is cooked in them. Therefore, utensils that have been used for chametz may not be used for Pesach, since the impregnated taste might penetrate into the food. Basically, the walls of the pot, just like we can't cook milk in a pot and then cook meat because the flavors transfer, because it's going from the walls of the pot back and forth. We know, just like that, we cannot. So too, by Passover, we cannot use what we use throughout the whole year. And if you don't believe me, you will know that for even wine caskets or many other foods that are made, there are certain pots and pans that are never used twice because it imparts flavor onto the next food. Number 2, many households, even though they have sets of many utensils, pots and pans and cutlery and all these things on Pesach, they find it necessary to use a few items which have been used throughout the whole year. So they can make it fit for use by what is called HAGALAH, immersion. Now this is otherwise called koshering the utensils. The method of koshering the utensils is deduced from the aftermath in the Torah when there was a war against the Midianites. And it says a whole thing over there where it finishes off saying, many utensils were found in the spoil which they were taken from the enemy. The Israelites were therefore instructed as to the method of HAGALAH. For these utensils, what does that mean? The Torah says, anything which shall stand fire, whether gold, silver, copper, iron, tin, or lead, you shall pass through the fire, and then it will be clean. Whatever cannot stand through the fire can be passed through water. That is the source of the procedure of HAGALAH. Based on this, the rabbis derived the guiding the principle which governs koshering of utensils. Basically, they eject in the same manner as they absorb, just like how the Torah said it. Therefore, utensils used over the fire must be koshered over the fire, like for kebab or anything that's on a spit. And utensils that are used to boil foods or liquids, they must be koshered by boiling water. But utensils that are only used for cold food can be koshered by just rinsing them in cold water. Now, that was the introduction into where HAGALAH comes from. It comes from the Torah, and it comes from the idea that when the Jews, when they brought everything back from the enemies over the enemy lines, they had to kosher everything because they had a lot of stuff that was in the walls of the food. You don't know what they made, you don't know who they made in there. So pretty much what they did was they koshered it. The same way how it was used in order to make it not kosher is the same way you're going to use it to make it kosher. Like we said, if it was used only by fire, we use fire. If it was used to boil, we use to boil. Now, if it was something which was boiled in the first pot, meaning if you put a pot on the fire and you cook inside of that pot meat and milk or pork or whatever it is, then you have to kosher the pot by filling up the pot and koshering it also through a first degree, meaning you just can't pour hot water onto this pot, as we will learn in a few short moments. Number 5. Ideally, Hagalah should be taken in the presence of a rabbi, and some communities actually have the custom that the Hagalah is carried out in the kitchen of the synagogue, either in the presence of a rabbi or at least someone who is fully conversant with the relevant laws. Number 6. The Hagalah should be completed before the beginning of the 5th hour of the eve of Pesach. That is, as long as the chametz may still be eaten, you may be able to do Hagalah. Because remember, you cannot have any chametz in your hands during Pesach. So once the time period after 5 hours, it becomes questionable whether you could even handle such items. So the truth is, you have to be able to do it before the 5th hour. Obviously, it is customary to kosher as many of the utensils which will be needed a few days before Pesach, therefore avoiding the complications of koshering them in the morning of Pesach. Number 7. All utensils should be thoroughly cleaned, and any rust removed before they're koshered in the appropriate manner. Because you just can't put in a dirty dish into there, it won't be able to do anything. Utensils made of wood, stone, or metal are allowed to be koshered. Again, utensils of wood, stone, or metal can be koshered. One must make sure that the utensils are free from cracks and crevices, so that therefore the Hagalah / boiling water will be effective. Care should be taken, especially with wooden vessels, as they are prone to cracks, and it may be hard to do Hagalah on these utensils. Number 9. Utensils made from plastic or any other synthetic materials, including Teflon, can also be koshered on Pesach. But, number 10, utensils made from earthenware, from china, from porcelain, or other ceramics may not be koshered on Pesach. Now remember, every time that I say kosher on Pesach or something like that, I'm always referring to before Pesach. So don't think when I say on Pesach, I'm actually saying on Pesach. Now, number 11. The custom of the Sephardim is to permit the use of glassware, or otherwise known as Pyrex, for Pesach, even if it has been used during the year for hot CHAMETZ. But this is not the custom of the Ashkenazim, who treat glassware like china and earthenware, and therefore do not allow them to be koshered for Pesach, otherwise than the following method. Their custom is to soak glassware for 72 hours, changing the water every 24 hours. Some Sephardim in the diaspora follow this Ashkenazi custom. Basically, between me and you and Chacham Ovadia Yosef and many of the Sephardim in our communities, we treat glass as its own entity, where it does not become meat, does not become milk, does not become chametz, does not become not chametz. Anytime that you look at glass and you see there are specks or whatever it is, know that if you have the right abrasive sponge, it can usually get everything out unless it's been burnt. That is the case when it comes to glassware. That is why on Pesach, any glass that you have on Pesach is absolutely not a problem. Even if you know that right before Pesach, you had a giant pizza on that glass. Number 12. According to Chacham Ovadia Yosef, Pyrex and Duralex utensils should be treated as glassware. Now, therefore, it is a person has to realize that that they can use it for Pesach as well. So now, he continues. Number 13. Enamel surfaces can be koshered, meaning that this happens many times, that they use a thin layer of enamel, which tries to be a little protection for whether it's the countertops or for the sink. You can pour hot water on there and you can kosher it. Formica. What is formica? Formica is a type of reconstituted wood, something like that. Like tables, or sometimes you'll see it by your cabinets, but usually you don't need to worry about your cabinets. But sometimes certain tables or trays that are made of formica, that they carried hot chametz, you want to clean it. So what you can do is you can just pour hot water on it and it'll take care of it. Single pieces of cutlery, forks, spoons, knives, all these things, and other small items can be koshered by immersion in a large pan or a large pot of boiling water. A number of articles may be koshered simultaneously. You don't have to go one by one. In this way, providing the water is constantly on boil. And the procedure is basically like this. Number 16. Large pots or pans, they have to first be koshered as well. So what should happen is you have to clean it inside and out, fill it with water that is brought all the way to a boil. And that boiling water, what does it do? It sort of boils over. When that happens, now you can actually take those spoons, those forks, those cutleries, and just dump it into this boiling water, and it'll be considered as koshering those cutleries or anything of the sort. Now, after you boil anything, after you pour hot water over anything or do HAGALAH, you take it and you rinse it under cold water. That way it seals it. What does it mean by it seals it? If you don't put it in cold water and let's say another piece of bread falls on top of it, since the fork is very hot or the metal is very hot, it could once again reabsorb the CHAMETZ. Number 17. The handles of utensils as well need to be koshered in the same way as the utensils themselves. Meaning that you can use the hot boiling water, have it overflow, or pour the boiling hot water on it for the handles. Number 18. Pressure cookers should be dismantled for cleaning and then koshered together with the rubber ring. Because remember, rubber is a type of plastic. And again, you are allowed to kosher plastic. I'll just go over it one more time. Any utensil made of wood, stone, metal, plastic, or any synthetic material, including Teflon, may be koshered on Pesach. But any utensil like earthenware, china, porcelain, or other ceramics may not be koshered for Pesach. Okay? So now, metal spits. What's a metal spit? Like things that you would make like a roast on. Or baking trays. They cannot be koshered by just HAGALAH. Why? Because remember we just said, the same way it gets not kosher is the same way you make it kosher. How does it get not kosher? Or how does it get chametz? By only dry heat. So you have to also use dry heat to make it kosher. So therefore, if it's not practical to heat them on a fire, you should get a new one. Or you can take a blowtorch and torch it up and it'll be fine. Obviously with proper care. Number 20. Coffee grinders may be used after cleaning. Remember, coffee grinders, it's cold, so it's no problem. Number 21. It is advisable to purchase new draining racks for Pesach. Basically the thing that you put on the bottom of your sink. But if it is not possible, they should be thoroughly cleaned with boiling water. Ovens and hobs, number 22. Including the oven and the hobs, the grating and the trays and all the things that are in the ovens. They may be koshered by first thoroughly cleaning them and then burning off all the chametz by turning on the burners for a maximum heat for about 15 minutes or more. And most ovens today, they have something called cleaning, the clean oven, something like that, where it's the highest level of heat and it burns and incinerates everything in the oven. You can just leave it on that and basically it'll clean the oven, it'll turn everything to dust, and everything on top of the oven, you just turn on your heat for 15 minutes and it'll pretty much kosher everything on your stove. If possible, the gratings and trays should be replaced by spare sets reserved for Passover use only. So if you're not able to turn it on for 15 minutes, what you should do is that you should use different ones. Number 23. Tables and working tops with non-absorbent, hard and undamaged surface, for instance, plastic laminates such as formica, melamine, or stainless steel, may be suitable for Pesach by thorough cleaning. Now remember, Don't forget the little edges under the surfaces and all the places that you would look at. And how would you clean it? You would take boiling hot water, pour it all over the place, and you would have no problem anymore. Number 24. Refrigerators and freezers should be emptied and thoroughly cleaned. They may then be restocked exclusively with food that is kosher for Pesach. You don't have to put any lining. Don't worry. Okay, dishwashers. Dishwashers should, if possible, not be used during Pesach. Otherwise, the filters should be replaced by new ones or at least be thoroughly cleaned. The dishwasher should then be switched on and a normal washing cycle be completed while it's empty. Remember to put in detergent. Number 26. Mixers and food processors that are used for dough, cake, and other types of CHAMETZ. What can you do over there? The mixer itself should be dismantled and each part by itself should be thoroughly cleaned. Afterwards, HAGALAH should be done to those parts which can safely undergo HAGALAH. What it means by safely is that if it's electrical, please ask your rabbi, depending on each and every piece. Number 27. A hand mincer. It requires HAGALAH. The two perforated cutters should be thoroughly cleaned before HAGALAH. It is preferable to heat them if possible, as this will certainly remove any remaining CHAMETZ. Number 28. A hot plate should be cleaned thoroughly and then just left on for 15 minutes and it'll take care of the job. Number 29. A metal or enamel sink should be cleaned. Special care to make sure that you clean the taps as well. And then boiling hot water is poured all over it. Number 30. The following process should be followed to kosher a microwave oven. It should first be thoroughly cleaned, and then a dish of water should be heated in it for several minutes in order to allow the steam to circulate freely. And then it makes no difference whether there are ceramic parts or not, since the walls of the microwave do not get hot enough when it is used. So clean it up, put in this water, some people put soapy water, for several minutes so the steam cleans everything up, and you'll be able to use that microwave. Number 31, false teeth. They do not require HAGALAH for Pesach, but they should be cleaned thoroughly, as well as your braces do not need to be HAGALAH, as some people would love to pour boiling hot water into their braces. Okay? So that is the first part of Pesach halachot. We will continue in the halachot with part 2, hopefully tomorrow, that are the laws regarding bidikat chametz, searching for chametz, after searching for chametz, the burning of chametz, and then as well as cleaning the house a little bit more properly. And then hopefully we would be able to go through the laws of the sale of chametz and nullifying chametz. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about the eve of Pesach when it's by itself and when it falls out on Shabbat. So God willing, I will hopefully see you tomorrow, or hopefully you'll be able to hear me tomorrow as well for the second part. Thank you.